So courtesy of our buddy CBR SNR, he said, how impressed were you with the way Brent Venables closed with a top 8 class, highest OU class in 2 years? The short answer is very impressed, borderline stunned that that was able to happen. But then I was looking with producer Jesse before we went on air, and I was saying, how high was this class rated? It was number 8 in the country, but you know, if Alabama finished number 8, it'd be one of the worst classes Saban's ever had. Well, Oklahoma finishes number 8. What does that mean? There was only one class that Riley had in his time there that finished higher than this, and it was like 2 or 3 years ago they finished 6th. They had one other class, I think, that finished 8th. Point being, Brent Venables came in, and while everyone's attention was on the transfer portal and, you know, how many players are we losing to the portal, Brent Venables came in, and those guys did a heck of a job keeping a class together that rates with an average player rating of over 91 and also sits squarely inside the top 10. And that's pivotal and necessary because Texas is up at, I think, number 5 is where the Longhorns finished. So it was necessary. But it's very good because at least what that is it's an indication from Oklahoma commits who got a taste of Brent Venables and that new staff there that that's something they want to buy into. That's all you can sell. Brent Venables can't sell his resume as a head coach. He doesn't have one. But what he can do is he can interact with you, albeit in a brief period of time. He can interact with you. He can sell you on what the game plan is, what the blueprint is. He can sell you on how he observed it firsthand at Clemson. He can sell you on the fact that he knows Oklahoma. He's no stranger to Norman and the surrounding areas. And if you'll just believe in it, I've seen it done. I've been a part of it being done. We will get it done here. I have to have guys like you in order to do that. Enough kids had that appeal to them that Oklahoma finished with a top 10 class. And again, they had like 20 minutes to put it together. They were barely in the door before it was signing day. So then, that's the A side. What's the B side? Well, the B side is everyone will expect if this guy finished top 10 with like a month to work on a class, imagine what he'll do with an entire cycle. And that's great, and it makes total sense to think that way. Now you got to back it up. It would look kind of strange, for example, if Brent Venables in Oklahoma were sitting there next February saying, all right, well, finishing 17th here. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not the end of the world, but it would be a very poor sophomore effort relative to what they just put together. So it was very impressive. I think another thing to pay attention to with Venables, and quite frankly, from this point moving forward, any head coach who lacks experience, either a first-timer or just has a few years under his belt, when they get major jobs, I cannot stress enough how much more layered the role of a head coach is now than it even was 5 years ago. When you see new things come into the equation, like the transfer portal, like NIL, and all that that encompasses, those are very quick statements and very quick sentences. There is so much. You could talk 8 hours straight about both of those topics. Well, think about what you have to be as a head coach. And that's on top of player development, player acquisition, the classical senses. That's on top of having to market your program and be the face of your program. It's on top of all the other things you have to do. Now, all of a sudden, you have to understand principles of marketing, and you have to understand branding, and you have to understand how to pitch that to kids in the NIL era in a much different way than you used to. You also have to understand how to build a college scouting department to fully leverage the transfer portal. There's so much that you have to know now that you never had to know before, that you spend just fractions of your time on football. I think one of the biggest surprises that the general college football public would come to realize if you truly had all access to a program is how little time head coaches spend on football. To the point where you better have your P's and Q's in a row as just a football mind before you get one of those jobs, because you don't have a whole lot of time. I mean, it's not like you're going to clinics and chalk talk sessions every other week. You don't have time to. You really got to manage your time right to keep your game sharp. Think about how basic that is. Being a head coach, especially if you're a play caller. Ryan Day at Ohio State. Like, it is a struggle. You have got to fight to keep your edge about yourself just as an offensive mind. Because every second you spend on that is a second that's not being dedicated to managing every other aspect of the program. That's why hiring the right people is very, very important. And that's also why it's so critical for your university to give you a big enough budget and to allocate enough heads, enough positions of employment to where you can fill out an army of a staff. Nick Saban doesn't do that just because he wants to accumulate bodies up there. Kirby Smart doesn't do that just because he likes a more full office. They do it because there are so many aspects of a program that it's impossible for one man to run it. Doesn't matter. 24 hours in a day in every state in the union. You got to have the right people in the building.